This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zaiba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mommying While Muslim podcast. This is Uzma Joffrey.
And this is Zaiba Hassan, and we are starting a new month this month, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that I just feel
February's
like
super
it's
short.
just it is super short.
It just
Thankfully,
started.
I feel like it just started, and thankfully for me, it ended quickly because it's not, my most comfortable month to talk about. It pushes me outside of my comfort zone, but it was a fun month to talk about. But we're going to put that in the past, and we're going to talk about this next month. But let's first start talking about what happened in your week this week, Uzma.
I know you're always talking to me about getting enough sleep, but man, Netflix has some good shows.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about these shows.
Okay, so I finished Inventing Anna. Really good watch, based on a true story.
It was a good watch, but this woman's accent, it was so freaking annoying. It was like fingernails on chalkboard for me.
Yeah, it took a while to get used to, but it's okay. And I just think, the glorification of the bad guy that's happened, I think it started with Breaking Bad or Dexter around that time, right? When we started glorifying the person who makes drugs and deals drugs and like serial murderers. And,
No. I
What?
would argue Batman. He's a vigilante. That's like back in like the 40s and 30s and 50s.
But he
back in the
beats up
day.
the bad guys. He's
Yeah,
not
he's a vigilante. He takes law into his own hands.
I would
right?
argue that he's a freedom fighter.
But it depends on how you
One
want to
person's
define
terrorist,
that.
yes. One person's terrorist,
See?
another
So
person's
it depends on
freedom
how you
fighter.
want to define it. But this
Yeah.
is why we work so well together.
Yes, exactly. So after finishing Inventing Anna, I immediately jumped into, even though I told myself I wasn't going to do it because Zayba's going to get very angry with me because I'm not sleeping,
So mad.
into the Fame game.
What is this?
I
haven't heard
never
of this.
would have thought, you know me. I don't want to watch something out of India. Just because,
Oh my
it's not really culturally relevant.
Oh my God.
You know
You
me,
just start
right?
that off and I'm like, oh my
I know.
God.
But it's so good, the Fame game. I highly recommend.
Is it a
Everybody
game
watch
show or is it like a reality
It's
show?
not.
Like, what is this?
It's completely fictional with one of the greatest Bollywood stars of all time. And she's acting as a movie star. And the effects that it has on somebody's family and the links that people will go through. And I don't care what you work in. You don't have to be a movie star in order for this to be true. But I think a lot of times as moms, especially, we're the glue holding families together. We're the ones that are like the public face of the family. We are the family's walking, talking, living, breathing PR.
True.
We're the billboards, right?
Yes.
And what toll does that take on a person when you're working or living, doing your thing? What toll does it play on your family? And I think that is the lesson from this particular show, which is why I think, and it's like season 1, so that means there's going to be a season 2, and I'm super excited.
Oh my gosh. But how
Because
are
of
you
course
handling the accents? Because, I know you with the accents. Like, how are you handling this?
I don't know. It's because it's her and because it is a bilingual show that completely has subtitles. It's Netflix, guys.
Okay.
So I think that's how I managed it. I was like, oh, because it has subtitles, I think
It's
I can
okay.
do it better. I don't know. Although growing up, like lots of Bollywood movies had subtitles that were very poorly translated. And I was able to tolerate those. I don't know. Tell me how your week's been.
Just speaking of sleep, like I am really, sleep is pretty much my passion, and making sure
Yes.
moms get good sleep. It's just one of the
Yes.
things that is like the core foundation of like everything in my life. So, I'm doing this sleep series for Emerge
Yes.
Consulting. So, and it was so funny. You and I were chit-chatting yesterday, and I was planning the workshop, and I coincidentally fell asleep while I was planning the workshop. So I slept while I was planning the workshop. So just goes to tell you that it actually really does work. So I do not like hearing that you actually are losing sleep because it really stresses me out. But
I
it
know.
is really
Sorry.
important, especially because we're going to be losing an hour of sleep, and we're going to be we're about to do the spring forward, and you and I
Yes.
are going to be 3 hours apart in less than 2 weeks, which is going to be throwing our schedule
Our
off
entire
even
schedule off.
further. Because even today, this episode, like, you're like, what the heck? Aren't we supposed to be
Where are you?
recording? I'm like, what are you talking about? So I look like a hot mess because I was like, no, we have 3 hours. What are you talking about? But I love that we can kind of like fly by the seat of our pants. We're moms. We know how to get this done. But
Yeah.
I am super excited because we are kicking off our March series, prepping for Ramadan. I cannot even believe that is Ramadan. It's around the
It's
corner.
nuts.
You're
Freaking
seeing
nuts.
everywhere, but this clean that, fast then. Today is the first day of Shaban, if we've calculated correctly. I'll have to look on my phone is actually in the Arabic, in the lunar calendar, so I'll have to look on my phone. So remember, everybody needs to make up their fast if they haven't already, or if you're not like me, I actually do it during those shorter days. That's my little cheat sheet. I'm not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who can't fast, we hope you tune in and find out how you are preparing yourselves and helping to prepare you physically, mentally, emotionally, and most importantly, as you know, spiritually for Ramadan. To that end, we've decided to share what we've been doing ourselves, in some cases to ourselves, in order to achieve that holistic wellness in preparation for this Ramadan and every Ramadan after, inshallah, ameen.
Inshallah.
Hopefully, inshallah, Allah is pleased with us. So we are gonna, this is just you and me today.
Yeah,
I
no
can't even
guests.
believe this. I love that. So
I know.
I'm gonna have you introduce yourself today, Uzma. Like, why don't you introduce us to what's your momming philosophy, Uzma? Like, let's reintroduce your momming philosophy to the audience.
So we kick off with this question, and since it's just you and me, we're going to do it for each other, especially because, Zaiba, our audiences at home and abroad have literally doubled. I don't know if it's a function of the episodes that we recorded last month, but people are coming to the podcast left, right, and center. And we are so, so grateful for all of you, old
Thank
and new listeners,
you.
supporting us. So to that end, for those of you who have never, or you're not caught up and you haven't heard about Zaiba and me, I'm a mom of 4. I'm a soccer mom, a Girl Scout mom, a ballet mom, a chauffeur mom, all of those things. And I love those jobs, even though I complain about it and I probably record one too many TikToks and reels about it, but it's funny, Kids give us a lot of material. That is hilarious. My oldest is going to be 14 shortly. So my kids are 13, 12, almost 11, and 7. So I have 4. I am a practicing physician running my mobile geriatric practice. And I'm board certified in both family medicine, geriatric medicine, and I've been married for 15 and a half years, alhamdulillah. And I podcast. My momming philosophy, since this is a momming podcast, is kind of the way we do this podcast. Fly by the seat of your pants and see whatever works for you. The biggest revelation that I had in mommying was realizing that there's not one book, there's not one manual to doing any of this right, especially because every single one of your children is an individual. And I completely did not practice the teachings of Ali radiallahu an, one of our khalifas, for our non-Muslim audiences listening, that you don't raise your kids the way you were raised. Like, every generation requires a different set of rules and standards. So when we grew up hearing, back in my day, the kids, we didn't even say oof to our parents, and we didn't question anything. We did whatever our parents said, down to marrying whoever they said. Yeah, none of that was okay. So our parents suffered a lot of trauma, and they, were passing it on to us, and we kind of threw it into the river, and we're like, nope, that's going down the river. Pharaoh can pick that up and do whatever he wants with it. We're not touching that. We're going to create a new narrative for ourselves and our family. And that's kind of part of my philosophy. At least I'm not going to speak for you, Zaiba, but to create a new story for my family going forward based on the advice of, our blessed Khalifa. So tell us, as an intro to these new listeners and our old ones, just to remind them who you are. Tell us what you're comfortable sharing about your kids and your momming philosophy, Zaiba.
Oh my goodness, like this is like, you know me, I hate being put on the spotlight. That's probably the first thing that which is weird because I'm a podcaster and I'm like, I hate the spotlight on me. So my name is Zaiba Hassan. I also am a mama of 4. My oldest is actually 18 and he is about to be launched. Meaning he is about to go to college. He does not want to be launched, but we are going to try to launch him.
Force him.
We are forcing that up, but no, alhamdulillah, like he's our blessing. And my youngest, I have a 18, 16, 11, and 9-year-old. They 3 boys and a girl. Same with Uzma, 3 boys and a girl, which is my blessing. I feel like for me, becoming a mom literally saved my life, and everything that I've done since then, since the birth of my first son, has actually launched me into the person that I was ultimately meant to be. And that is why I love to empower other mothers. I am a certified parent coach, and my philosophy is mindfulness and conscious parenting. I'm a spiritual mediator obviously from the Islamic perspective, but it actually translates to other religions as well. And part of what I like to do and what I enjoy doing is working with teenagers, because really, what better microcosm, they go through everything during this time period, right? I'm a basketball and baseball mom, though my oldest is ending his basketball career, which was really, really a sad moment in our life, because when you're spending all this time on the gym floors, it really is a sad thing to kind of see that go. But thankfully, I have a second set to make up for that. I've been married to the love of my life for 23 years. 23. Mashallah. Like you lose after 20, you kind of lose count.
It is
That's
23 because when this podcast started, it was your 20th.
Oh, that's right. So 23, and we're going to be celebrating our third anniversary birthday. It's coming up. I'm so excited. What else am I supposed to be talking about? Because that's the other thing. I have ADD, which is kind
of... Your momming philosophy.
Okay, because that's the other thing I do have, which is why Uzma has to kind of put me with the notes, because if we don't have notes, it's like squirrel. I start talking about something else. But my momming philosophy is, let me say this the right way. We go through challenges with our children because we need to in order to be awakened to the person that we're supposed to ultimately become as people and as individuals. And even though in the moment it seems very challenging and it's hard, when we look back on it, we're like, okay, that's the reason why we're going through this. And I've gone through some challenging things in the last couple of years, as a lot of us have with COVID. And I don't regret any of it, and I love every single moment of it. And I wake up, I am that creepy mom that goes into their rooms at night when they're asleep. That I love you forever, I like you forever. That book where the mom's like crawling in their room. Like I am that mom that goes and crawls in their room and then like looks at them, and I'm like, oh my God, I love them. I made these babies. And I am that creepy mom, and I love it. I love every single moment of it, even if you wake up with the pit in your stomach, and I really do. I love every single moment of it, and you can call me whatever, but it is what it is, and I'll be sad to see it end, but that's when I get to become a grandmother. So that I'm looking forward to that next chapter of my life. So, the fact that we can create platforms to help other moms, live their best life, and the fact that we're doubling our listeners, I really appreciate it, because we try to keep it real here on Mommyingwhilemuslim. It's not an easy journey, but I love that we're doing it and growing with you. So, and I wouldn't want to do it with any other partner than you, Dr. Uzma Jaffrey. And then our behind the scenes, our Joe, who's our producer behind the scenes. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, he always saves us. Of course, he tapped out in February because it was an embarrassing month to be with our brother online. We were like, how come Joe's not here again? Oh.
He's like, oh.
But it's awesome. He's like, I'm not coming on. Are you crazy?
It's like too early in the morning. Anyways. Yeah. Okay, so
all right, so let's get kicking.
We're gonna get started because Ramadan and the fasting and all that. We hear all these things. One of the things that I'm in a good fitness routine right now. We've been trying to work on this health and wellness journey, both of us together, because we were like, we gotta do this. And one of the things when Ramadan happens is you're on this good kick, but then you stop with the fitness, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm tired. I'm whatever.
Yeah.
What is one of the hardest things about getting started? Let's say you're on there and starting on the fitness routine, but staying on this fitness routine when you're in this, when you have this great momentum. What is something that is really difficult for you to kind of stay on it?
Well, I think one of the mistakes that we make with Ramadan, especially, is we wait until the first Ramadan, right? And so everybody has that first week where we're growling or trying not to growl, because we're withdrawing from all the sugar and carbs and the breakfasts and everything superfluous we're not used to eating, or those snacks and stuff that we try to fuel ourselves with, quote unquote. It's not fuel.
No.
But we try to keep going with some of the garbage, the 3 p.m. stuff. And we wait until Ramadan. So that's why, if we remember our sunnah, the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that, he never fasted more than he did during Shaban, which was the month in preparation for Ramadan. So we're super, we have this super example of how to do it right. Get started a month in advance, because remember, it takes 30 days to develop a habit. Actually, I think it's 40.
Yes.
But, start with 30. And then by the time you get to Ramadan, you're like a pro. And so you're not going to feel some of that withdrawal and fatigue that we all feel that first few days to weeks.
Yeah.
And then
7 to 10 days, I would say.
7 to 10 days. So that's why I feel like, especially for moms, remember, a lot of us, those of us who are premenopausal, are having periods. So we're missing those days. And I know that there are some of us out there who believe it's okay to take hormones so that you can get all of your fasts in Ramadan. As a medical physician, I don't think that that's okay. I just really, I think you're screwing with your hormones, considering how much everybody is so obsessed with their hormones all the time. Why would you throw your natural cycle, your God-given bodily functions, why would you throw them off like that? So we don't get
and
that
there's
consistent...
a reason why you get it, right? Like there's a reason.
Exactly. Yeah. So we don't even get that 30 days to build the habit. So for busy moms like us, who are also, keeping a close eye on our active kids during Ramadan, we don't have the 30 days to develop a habit, which is why by the end of the month or after, it's really hard to do those makeup fasts and to do the Shawwal fasts, the extra credit brownie fasts after the 7 that we are recommended to do. And then, it kind of is a, F it, kind of mentality where I didn't get to do this. So then I don't need to read my daily Quran anymore. Oh, I don't need to do my, my voluntary prayers anymore. So that momentum gets lost because, again, we didn't get those 30 days. So that's why if you can start in Shaban, even if you get just 2 weeks, you add that 2 weeks to your 2 weeks of, actually 3 weeks in Shaban and 3 weeks in Ramadan, you can continue that momentum of your physical, spiritual, mental, emotional fitness journeys, inshallah.
No, I definitely appreciate it. So you're trying to say, like, to get started, and we're not talking about necessarily if you can't do the full-on fasting, right? Because doing 2 months of full-on fasting is a little bit more difficult for some people. But, start by cutting out the sugar, maybe not doing the coffee, not doing some of that, the 3 o'clock pick-me-up snack thing that you need. Start cutting some of those things out so that it makes the transition during Ramadan a little bit easier. Is that what you're kind of suggesting for some of us mamas to kind of get through that Ramadan a little bit easier for us?
Yeah, I think start early. It's like, training for any competition. And Ramadan is a competition, right? That's the time when we're competing with our brothers and sisters for our good deeds. No, I'm going to stay up every single night for Taraweeh. No, I'm going to finish 2 Quran. I'm going to finish reading it twice this month. I'm going to do these extra acts of charity. If I see a sister doing something, then my goal is, okay, I got to do that better or do twice as much. And, that is when competition is okay in good deeds, otherwise, that I don't feel like that's okay. But yeah, that's kind of my point. But
so what are you doing to add that extra level of spirituality? Like what what things, like what habits are you starting to add? So you're talking about some of those physical things that you're incorporating in your everyday, right? But what are some things that you're adding or incorporating into your everyday that's bringing you a sense of spirituality or feeling of peace or more of a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in preparation for Ramadan?
Something super simple, tasbih.
Oh,
Our
yes.
basically our I guess, what do you call it? It's kind of like our version of the rosary, but we do it on our fingers. Some people do have prayer beads
Mm-hmm.
to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
forget what we call it in Arabic, but yeah, just those 33, 33, 33 glorifications of God that we do after every prayer, practicing that now, so that it becomes kind of like involuntary for me. And I know for a lot of people it's involuntary, but in the interest of time, as busy moms, we're like, oh my God, I got to get this done. Or sometimes, I've said this before in the podcast, I'm praying in the car because I'm so busy chauffeuring from place to place to
Yes.
place, and I feel safer in my car in my well, it's not a red state anymore, it's purple, but I feel safer praying inside of the car. And then I have to go, usually pick up a kid or drop off a kid. So I don't have the time. I don't, quote unquote, have the time, but I remember in a carpool growing up that the uncle who took us always had his prayer beads in his hand while he
Yes.
had his hands on the
I do
steering wheel, and
that.
he was doing
Yeah.
that. And I would always be so afraid because he had like the 1,000 beads that he would
Oh,
do.
I would love to
Yeah, the
see some of
really
that.
long one. Yeah, I have one, but I've never gotten through the 1,000. And he would go through
I
that
have
1,000 every morning.
I
Oh, you
have
have the Mommy One
our
Muslim ones.
bracelet. Yeah.
Yeah. So, he would do it while he was driving. And as a kid, I was like in awe. Like, how can you manage the steering wheel and do that? But at the time, I didn't know how to drive. It is very doable. You can. And you don't even have to hold beads. Like we said, we have our fingers to do it. And
Hmm.
that's one small step that I've made in order to achieve some of that spiritual preparation and wellness for Ramadan. So
And
I
you know
want to
what's
ask you, oh, go ahead.
and let me just tag on a little bit of something, because I've been finishing up my mindfulness. Like, I have to get my CEs every couple of months. You know how that is, my continuing
Yeah.
education. And I've been taking this mindfulness class where it's talking about the brain chemistry and the change when we start focusing on mindfulness. And one of the things, I had mentioned it before. Actually, we did this for our Patreon. So our Patreon people know a little bit about this with the PQ reps. They understand this, where you're spending a little bit of time and you're tapping your fingers together. And part of that, how I do it, is with the tasbih, and then it's this forced connection, and that you learn that actually in your meditation and your mindful, and it reconnects the synapses in your brain, and it actually shows up in your MRIs for calming yourself. So while you're working on your spirituality, you're actually changing and redirecting the synapses in your brain as well, and it has been shown on MRIs for reconnection.
This
Isn't
is
that
true.
amazing?
Yeah. As somebody who
Isn't
sees
this
a lot of
amazing?
dementia and a lot of cognitive issues, it is true. You can't grow your neurons, but you absolutely can grow your synapses, which are the connections
Isn't
between the
that
neurons. And
amazing? And
that's
I'm
super
like, this
important.
is something that God has been given us as a tool to kind of change and
Neuroplasticity.
alter. It's neuroplasticity, exactly. So it's something that I definitely do with my kids, and as obviously we do it with Thusby or like with your hands if you don't have Thusby. But it's something that you can do. You can do it in the carpool lane. You can do it when you feel like you want to curse somebody else because they cut you off or whatever the case may be. Take your breath, do your thusby, but you can do it on your fingers. It's a great way to get reconnected.
So you mentioned mindfulness, and I
Hmm.
want to know how different it is from growth mindset, and what is the role of growth mindset in preparing ourselves for this fortification pre-Ramadan?
Well, honestly, for me, it's always like, me. Um, I try to live in that Ramadan, quote unquote, Ramadan mindset every day.
Mm,
Meaning, I don't, I'm not judging anybody, but I don't like to consider myself a Ramadan Muslim. I try to do and practice what I preach every day, whether it's Ramadan or not. But what I do like to do is incorporate all those extra things that we do, like charity. I try to do the fasting on Mondays and Thursdays to the extent that I can. I'm not fasting today. But those, and by the way, fasting is more of a sense of physical connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's like a physical, tangible reminder of being connected to God, to something bigger than yourself. That's how I like to look at it. When I pray, it's a physical, tangible connection to God, something bigger than yourself. It's going through the motions. So for me, every time I pray, and I've talked about it before, and I know it's not the most popular way of thinking about it. I don't think God needs us to pray to him. I think God knows we need to pray as people. Like, we need to take those forced breaks in the day. We need to reconnect with ourselves. We need to take those mini breaks. Like, it's not because I personally feel like I'm going to hell if I don't pray on time or whatever. Like, I believe that God is more forgiving. I know this is not the most popular thing for people to hear, but I do know that God knows that we need that connection with him in order to be able to move on throughout their day. So when you're praying, to have that spiritual connection with him every time you go down to pray, when you're putting your head on the ground, you're humbling yourself, you're connecting to the ground, to the earth. It's such a humbling experience when you get to do that every single time. So to really be mindful of that, I feel like I'm being quiet only because it's hard to explain, because you really just have to experience it. And not going through the motions for the sake of going through the motions, but going through the motions for the sake of actually experiencing the connection to something that's bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I know that's
whether
hard
it's
to put into
Ramadan or
words.
not. Whether it's
absolutely.
Ramadan or not.
Yeah. And, in terms of growth mindset, what I was thinking was, a lot of times when people are looking at, oh, I need to get physically fit, they're thinking, for women especially, I hear this conversation all the time from moms, all the times. It's disturbing that every single conversation I have with moms in my local crew, the talk about weight loss comes up.
Yeah.
And that to people is the definition of fitness. And I can tell you categorically, no, it is not the definition of fitness.
No.
Weight loss has its place in health, but when that becomes the conversation that we're always having, it becomes toxic, it becomes problematic, it becomes a mountain now that we have to scale. And everything associated with it, including modifying our diets which is for wellness, which is to detoxify your body, which is to decrease the inflammation in your body, which is to fuel your body. All the good things that food is for, it becomes hard to do. It becomes hard to make good choices because now we've put them on this pedestal, mountain, if you will, and now our brains...
You're creating value in something that shouldn't have value.
Right.
Right.
And so everything associated with that becomes very difficult. Yeah. And we start telling ourselves stories like, I can't do this. It doesn't work for me. I tried and I failed. It works for her. That works. Yeah, no, these are all false stories. Yeah. It works for everyone. It actually works for everyone if you do not have a toxic relationship with food, physical fitness, exercise. And I'm talking to myself first. Running is so hard, I could never do it. No, it's not.
Right.
If that were true, then there wouldn't be marathon runners and sprinters. I'm telling a story to myself that running is hard for me. Or running is hard,
right?
Yeah.
Well, you're trying to control your own personal narrative.
Right.
You're trying to change the narrative, and
trying to convince my brain that this is true, and it's not. It's not a fact. It is not a fact that you cannot lose weight if that's what you want to do and you think that that's important for your physical fitness journey. It is hard to finish the Quran one time if you have told yourself that, I don't have time in the day. I guarantee you, as a busy mom, and I tell people when they tell me that they're too busy, I am secretly thinking to myself. So anybody who listens to this podcast who knows me, now you know. I am thinking to myself, I don't know a person busier than me. That is a big fat lie. We make time for what we want to make time for. And if we're not making time for our regular salah and we're not making time for the Quran, that
means you just don't want to do it.
We just don't want to do it.
Like today, Uzma wanted to do something, and I just said, no, I'm not doing it. I had time, and I just said, no, not doing it.
I would rather work out or do my meditation, but I'm not doing that. And that's
literally
great.
was like, no, not doing it. And then poor Uzma was like, it was like ... She was like, okay, I get it. but that's the truth of it, right? Like you're doing things like at some point you're making those choices, right? And and it is it's in your hands. It's in your power to do that. And by the way, if it's something you want to do, you'll make the time to do it.
How many hours do we spend on this podcast a week, Zaiba?
Oh, it's a part-time to a full-time job.
It's a part-time job. Yeah.
It's a part-time. It's definitely a part-time job.
It's at least 20 hours a week.
That
we put in, and we've had to outsource because there weren't enough hours in a day to do it.
We both have full-time jobs.
Exactly. Well, I don't have a full-time job. My full-time job is my kids, but
right. But I mean, that's one of our full-time jobs, and then we have another, and then another, and then. But
then we run our businesses. You know, we have our relationships that we're trying to foster with our friends and husbands, and trying to make time for them, right?
But
so, and then work for our
want
community.
to do.
Exactly. And so anybody who has already convinced themselves that this is now unscalable, that's not a growth mindset. And remember, our kids are watching and they're listening. So every time we're verbalizing that I can't, I won't, I don't, I can't, that especially is so toxic and harmful for these children because we're telling them, oh, you can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. Like you are, like the world is your oyster, kids. Like go be great. But they see us not trying to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we talk so much about modeling good behavior, whether it is our spiritual behavior, our religious behavior, our physical behavior counts too. Mm-hmm. Our mental, whatever we verbalize that demonstrates our mental state, our kids are picking that up. They're absorbing it as well. So in terms of getting physically fit, mentally fit, emotionally fit, religiously fit, whatever you need to, I think it's really important to believe that you can, because you can, you know, the religion wouldn't be hard if it wasn't for people, because Allah said, I made it easy for you. Like, don't make it hard for the people. Getting physically fit, okay, plus or minus, that can be hard, right? But you have done hard things. If you have pushed a watermelon out of an opening the size of a lemon, you can do hard things, moms. Even if you had a C-section, you can do hard things.
And by the way, if we're talking about physical fitness, right, it really truly is just putting one foot in front of the other. We're not talking about, like you were talking about a marathon. We're not talking about running a marathon.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that, actually. No. You just need to put one foot in front of the other, in front of the other, in front of the other. That's really, truly what you need to do.
Yeah. And pick something you like and can do consistently. That's it.
Exactly.
Whether it's rock climbing or walking or yoga, it does not need to be marathons or, you know, what is it? I took one cycle class and thought I was going to have like cardiac arrest there.
I hate it. I hate it because my bottoms doesn't fit on that bicycle seat and it hurts. And I won't do it. But these people that love it, good for you. Good for you. I don't like
very
it.
Happy for you.
And I won't do it. So that's the key thing. If you love it, you will do it. So whatever is going to be consistent, that's the key, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you have made some really amazing leaps and bounds, not even in a year, but definitely since last Ramadan to this now new Ramadan. You've made so many changes in your life, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so in awe, and I wish I could do all the things that you're doing, but alhamdulillah, mashallah, I'm really, really happy for you. Do you want to share like the top 3 things that have helped you and the 3 biggest challenges that you've had on this journey? Tell the audience about that.
Well, honestly, it's the consistency, right? Like, so that's the number one thing, and it's the number one thing that I needed to do, but it was also the hardest thing to do, right? Because being
Mm-hmm.
consistent is hard. But for me, it really came down to going to the doctor. So doctors scared me, but it was a necessary thing. I had to go, and they were just like, if you keep on this path, you're just not gonna do well. And for full disclosure, it was one of those. It was I was on an emotional journey, and during that emotional journey, I was using food as a way to cope with that process, and that's the truth. And I had to break the cycle, and using food to not fuel, to feed my emotional deficiencies,
Yeah, shortcomings. I
whatever the
like
case may be.
shortcomings
So
better. Yeah.
shortcomings is probably the biggest thing. So that was the number one thing. And being able, and like you said, I wasn't using food for fuel. I was actually feeding my feelings. And that was the big thing. And it started with the fatty liver. And that's the truth. And they were like, you keep doing this and you're just going to be sick and you're going to die and blah, blah, blah. And that scared the crap out of me. So I had to cut out sugar. I had to cut out gluten. I had to do all those things, which, by the way, was the most necessary thing to do, but it was the hardest thing to do. But I have to say, I started with a liquid diet of 6 weeks. It sucked, but I think it was what I needed to do to jumpstart it. And I feel so much better. I cut out coffee because, it was very highly acidic and it was just not doing the things that I needed to do. And, I cut out the hardcore cardio. I just focused on, lighter yoga and strength training and doing the things that I love. And, I think I've lost like 50 some pounds since September and still going. And, just if anything, it just feels better not because of the weight loss. Of course, that helps me with my numbers and blah, 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 all the good stuff that comes. But for me, it was the breaking the emotional connection with food. That was the biggest thing. And two, for me, it's stopping that, and recognizing the pattern to behavior of food and fuel. Like, that is why I'm eating. I'm hungry, so I'm going to eat, and that's why I'm doing it. So I feel like this Ramadan, it'll be a little bit easier for me because it was very anxiety ridden, right? It was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. Like right now, I'm not feeling 100%, so I would feed myself with sugar to kind of like pop myself. It is, by the way, like a drug, a class A drug on some levels. Like it has the same effect on your brain as like cocaine and some of these other things, that spike your brain a little bit up. And in recognizing the effects that it has, I realized that I just can't do that anymore. And my big thing, my motivating factor as with everything was, and I've said it before in the past, like I always say I'd die for my kids, but I wasn't really living for them. And I wasn't living for myself. And I decided I wasn't going to be a martyr anymore. And that was my biggest thing and the biggest motivating change. Like I had to do something to be able to really enjoy my life with them. And so that's my big thing. And I have to say, I feel so much better. And my story is still being written, and I'm a work in progress. But I feel like I definitely am I've jump started it. Let's just put it that way.
And I noticed that in your dialogue over the last 3 years, just probably not on the podcast, but, behind the scenes.
Just behind the scenes, yeah.
Behind the scenes. But it was some point in the summer where I heard the switch and I felt the switch, where you finally felt like, or verbalized that you deserved it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times moms, for whatever reason, whether it's we're too busy mommying, we feel like we don't deserve to spend that money on the trainer, or we don't deserve to spend our money with this, fitness coach, or we don't deserve to, buy this organic, whatever food plan that we're doing.
Right.
But that's, again, another false story, right?
Yeah.
That we tell ourselves. You are absolutely deserving, because that's the way Allah made you. You are deserving of everything good for yourself in this life and inshallah in the next. Just do right. make good choices. You know, that's what gets us into Jannah, into paradise in the end, right? Make good choices. And taking care of this body, taking care of the soul that Allah has put within it, that is really critical. So it is important to invest in yourself and stop and, you know, ask that question that Zaiba did. I'm willing to die for my kids, but am I willing to live for them? I remember when I heard that, when I heard you say that, like I had chills and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so right. So many moms don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, they're busy planning on dying for their kids and we're like figuring out all the emergency situations, but day to day, we need to show our kids that we're living for them and for ourselves. You know, because
100%.
our bodies are an amana, our mental state is an amana. So if we're not getting therapy because of unworked baggage or, you know, repressed memories, we're not doing ourselves a favor. We're certainly not doing our kids a favor because we're not learning the tools that we need in order to succeed. And, you know, what's a Ramadan when you're praying for things when your heart is so heavy? The whole point of it is to have a light, clean heart. And you can't do that when you've got unprocessed emotional, mental trauma. You can't do that when you don't feel physically good. It ruins the experience. And then we're like, oh, next Ramadan, I'm going to do it. No, you're not.
Nope.
If you don't decide to make the change now, you're not going to do it later. It's just not going to happen. So.
Exactly. Inshallah and Ameen. And I hope, if anything, you know, if anybody can learn from this, is that it's never too late. You deserve it. It doesn't matter what you've gone through. And trust me, we've gone through some tough times. You deserve it. And, you know, Ramadan is an amazing opportunity to start a new year fresh, right? Like for Muslims, Ramadan can be like a new year of sorts, right? It's a new beginning, a spiritual beginning. So
Tabla rasa.
Let's just do it. Like, get it done. Is it tabla rasa? Let's just get it done.
If it's
Why
carte
not?
blanche or if it's tabla rasa, I don't remember.
Carte blanche means like, we'll have to look it
Blank
up
slate?
and put it in the show.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
We'll look it up and put it in the show notes. But I feel like if anything, if we can motivate you guys to kind of put yourself first, and you know, like they do say, like the moms put the oxygen mask on, because if we can't breathe, we can't help anybody else breathe. Like, so just get it done. And if Ramadan is a good excuse, a good starting point for you to do that for yourself, for your family, let's get it done, ladies. Let's get it done.
And this whole month, we're going to be helping prepare ourselves. And we invite everybody to join us for the ride to achieve that physical, emotional, mental, religious, you know, spiritual fitness level so that we can have, inshallah, the best, most productive, most beneficial Ramadan of our lives. That's our goal every single year. So, you know, to that end, we're so, so glad that everybody joined us today. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.